This is the image of the moon landing we all remember. A ghostly, gray figure descending a ladder into the vast blackness of space. For more than half a century, this grainy footage has been the definitive record of humanity's greatest single achievement. It's iconic, it's historic, and it's a lie. Now, not a lie that we never went to the moon, but a lie of omission, because the clearest, highest quality footage of this moment has been missing for decades. This is the official story of the lost Apollo 11 tapes, and the shockingly simple reason you've never seen the moon landing in its true breathtaking clarity. July 20th, 1969. Over 500 million people, the largest television audience in history at the time, are glued to their screens. They're united in a singular moment of awe and anticipation. On their televisions, they see flickering, ethereal shapes moving across a dark landscape 240,000 miles away. It's Neil Armstrong taking his first steps onto the lunar surface. His words, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind," are heard with perfect clarity. The images, however, are anything but. They're blurry, washed out, with phantom-like trails following every movement. The low contrast makes it hard to distinguish the astronaut from the lunar dust. Yet, these imperfect pictures became the defining visual of the 20th century. They symbolized the peak of human ingenuity and a moment that brought the entire world together. For decades, we just accepted these images as the best we could get. We assumed that transmitting a live broadcast from the moon was such an incredible technical feat that this was the inevitable result. But it turns out that assumption was dead wrong. The broadcast the world saw was a degraded copy. The original was much, much better, and NASA lost it. To understand what was lost, you first have to understand how we saw anything at all. The Westinghouse camera used on the moon was an engineering marvel, but it operated on very little power and bandwidths. To make it work, it recorded in a special format known as slow-scan television, or SSTV. Think of it as a unique, high-information video file that captured 10 frames per second with 320 lines of resolution, far more detail than people saw at home. That raw, high-quality signal was beamed from the moon and received by 3 massive radio telescopes on Earth, 1 in California and 2 in Australia. There, the signal was recorded in its pure, unadulterated form onto 1-inch telemetry data tapes. These tapes were the master copies, the high-resolution originals. But here was the catch. You couldn't just plug that SSTV signal into a 1969 television set. The world's broadcast standard, NTSC, used 30 frames per second. So, in real time, ground stations performed a crude conversion. They essentially pointed a standard TV camera at a special high-resolution monitor displaying the SSTV feed. That converted copy is what was sent to Mission Control in Houston and then broadcast to the world. Every step of this relay process degraded the image, adding noise and stripping away sharpness. The world watched a copy of a copy of a copy. NASA knew this. The telemetry tapes were meant to be the crucial backup, the official historical record. But when the live broadcast went off without a hitch, these priceless tapes were boxed up, labeled, and shipped to the NASA archives. And then they vanished. For years, nobody really gave the original tapes a second thought. The mission was a huge success. The broadcast had been seen by millions, and NASA had moved on. It wasn't until the late 1990s and early 2000s that historians and retired Apollo-era engineers started asking a critical question. Still photographs taken directly from the ground station monitors in 1969 showed stunningly clear images far better than the broadcast footage. So, where were the tapes holding that original high-quality signal? This question kicked off a multi-year, international search. At the heart of it was a NASA engineer named Dick Nafja, who had actually helped manage the original 1969 broadcast. He and a dedicated team of retired engineers began what they called a detective story. They scoured NASA facilities and the U.S. National Archives, interviewed old colleagues, and followed leads from Maryland to Australia. The search team held onto a sliver of hope. I mean, these weren't just any tapes. This was the master recording of the moon landing. Surely, someone had the foresight to label them as historically priceless and lock them in a vault. But as the years of searching turned up nothing, a dreadful realization began to set in. The tapes weren't just misplaced, they were gone. And the official explanation for their disappearance is both shockingly mundane and deeply frustrating. In a 2009 press conference, NASA finally gave the official answer. There was no conspiracy, no cover-up. The conclusion of the investigation was that the original Apollo 11 tapes were almost certainly erased and reused as a routine, cost-saving measure. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, NASA was facing a severe shortage of magnetic data tapes. A new satellite program, Landsat, was hungry for tapes, and a new batch the agency ordered had failed to meet quality standards. So, managers went looking for usable stock. Following standard procedure, they began pulling tapes from the archives, tens of thousands of them, to be degaussed or magnetically erased and recertified for reuse. It's believed that among the massive collection of tapes that were erased were the 45 reels containing the raw data from the Apollo 11 moonwalk. In the triumph of the moment, the tapes were just seen as backups whose job was done. No one in the bureaucracy of the 1970 seconds flagged them as untouchable artifacts. As Nafja himself put it, I don't think anyone in the NASA organization did anything wrong. It slipped through the cracks, and nobody's happy about it. They were erased to save a few $1,000s, an act of bureaucratic oversight that permanently deleted the highest fidelity recording of humanity's finest hour. So what did we really lose? Comparing the original SSTV signal to the broadcast version is like comparing a modern 4K movie to a grainy 480p YouTube video from 2008. The original tapes held images with far better contrast, more detail, and none of the ghostly artifacts seen in the broadcast. We would have seen the texture of the lunar soil, the fine details on the astronauts' suits, and the reflection of the lander in their visors with incredible clarity. Had those tapes survived, modern technology could have created a version of the moonwalk so pristine it would feel like you were standing there with them. But not all was lost. While the original SSTV tapes were gone, Nafja's search did uncover the best surviving copies of the converted broadcast footage. They found high-quality tapes in the CBS News archives and old kinescopes recordings made by filming a television screen at the Johnson Space Center. For the 40th anniversary in 2009, NASA commissioned Lowry Digital, the same company famous for restoring classics like Star Wars and Bambi, to restore this footage. They painstakingly removed noise, corrected contrast, and sharpened the images frame by frame. The result is the best-looking version of the moonwalk we have ever seen. It's a huge improvement, but it's still a restoration of the degraded copy, not a recovery of the original masterpiece. The story of missing NASA tapes is pure fuel for conspiracy theories. For decades, a fringe element has claimed the moon landings were faked, and to them, the missing tapes are the ultimate proof of a cover-up. But the official story holds up. NASA's own engineer, Dick Nafska, confirmed that there was no video that came down slow scan that was not converted live, fed live to Houston and fed live to the world. In other words, nothing was hidden. The public saw everything, just in lower quality. So what about those tapes sold at a Sotheby's auction in 2019 for $1.82 million? Those were bought at a government surplus auction back in 1976 by a NASA intern named Gary George for just $217.77. While incredibly valuable, NASA confirmed these are simply high-quality copies of the converted NTSC broadcast signal recorded at Mission Control. They are not the missing raw SSTV tapes. They are likely the sharpest first-generation copies of the broadcast that exist, but they still come from after the crucial conversion that lost so much detail. The real originals remain lost to history, victims of a magnetic eraser and a stunning lack of foresight. What do you think? The loss of the Apollo 11 tapes is a painful lesson in just how fragile history can be. A simple bureaucratic decision erased the best visual record of a moment that should have been preserved for all time. What do you think? Was this just a costly mistake, or do you believe there's more to the story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy unraveling the great mysteries of space exploration, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss our next investigation. The story of the lost Apollo 11 tapes isn't a conspiracy, it's a tragedy. It's a tale of incredible achievement followed by a simple, human error in judgment. The priority in 1969 was broadcasting the event live to a waiting world, and in that, they succeeded beyond all expectations. Preserving the backup tapes was an afterthought, a task for another day that tragically never came. The clearest, sharpest view of Neil Armstrong's giant leap for mankind is gone forever, erased in the name of efficiency. We are left with the ghostly images we all know, a faded but still powerful reminder of what we once achieved. And it's a warning. History isn't permanent. It has to be actively protected, or it can vanish in an instant, leaving us with only a fuzzy memory of what was once crystal clear.